Silence lay over the land. Only the whisper of wind through the reeds on the riverbanks. Only the ripples of golden water under the sun of Mesopotamia. It was around 10,000 BC, and the world was utterly different from what we know today. There were no cities, no streets, no palaces, no temples. Only small, mobile groups of humans searching for food and shelter. They hunted deer and wild boar, gathered seeds and fruit, lived under nature's mercy. But here, between the Tigris and Euphrates, something different happened. The rich soil left by the annual floods, the mild climate, and the abundance of fresh water. Everything whispered to humans, "Stay here, this is your home." Those who heard that whisper were our distant ancestors. They noticed seeds left by chance would sprout and grow. They noticed that tameable animals were easier to keep than constant hunting. Slowly, generation by generation, they shifted from food gatherers to food producers. The change was small in form but enormous in effect. When humans learned agriculture, they no longer had to spend the whole day searching for food. They gained spare time. Time to think, to create, to build, time to dream of something bigger than mere survival. It was natural that this would happen here, on this blessed land. Mesopotamia was more than a place. It was an idea. The idea that humans can control their environment rather than be slaves to it. That society can be stronger than the sum of its parts. That the future can be better than the past. Around 400 BC, in southern Mesopotamia, a distinctive people appeared. We don't know exactly where they came from, but we know what they did. They changed history forever. They called themselves the Black-Headed Ones, but history knows them as the Sumerians. They were first in many things. Imagine waking in a Sumerian village about 400 BC. The smell of fresh bread fills the air. Yes, they invented suitable ovens for baking. The sound of hammers on copper. They learned to smelt metals. In the main village square you see something no previous culture had: the wheel. An early wheel made from connected wooden pieces, not quite round and noisy, yet revolutionary. Suddenly heavy loads moved easily, travel reached farther, trade with distant tribes became possible. But the greatest invention was not material, it was intellectual: writing. Sumerian writing began as a simple counting system for goods. A merchant marking sacks of grain or heads of livestock on wet clay with simple symbols. Over time, those symbols became more complex and conveyed ideas, feelings, and stories. Thus, cuneiform was born, writing made of small wedge-shaped impressions in clay. Imagine the enormous power of this invention. Humans could transfer knowledge across time and space. Laws could be written rather than remembered. History could be recorded rather than left to myth. Poems and wisdom could be preserved for future generations. The Sumerians didn't stop at inventions. They built something the world had never seen. True cities, not just large villages but advanced urban centers, each governed by complex laws and social systems. Names like Uruk, Uar, Lagash, Eridu became legendary. These were the first city-states in the world. Each had its own god, its own king, its own identity. At the heart of each city rose a ziggurat, a stepped temple sometimes reaching 70 meters high. These were not merely religious buildings, but economic and administrative centers. In the lower levels, scribes recorded transactions. In the middle, priests made administrative decisions. At the top, it was believed that God resided. The king was not only a political ruler, but the God's chosen shepherd on earth. Despite that sacred aura, the Sumerian system was strikingly advanced. Popular councils participated in decisions, courts judged according to written laws, and there were rudimentary social protections for the poor, widows, and orphans. City life thrived and was diverse. Markets bustled with traders bringing wool from Anatolia, gemstones from Afghanistan, wood from Lebanon, and gold from Egypt. The Sumerians established a true global trade network. They invented schools, tablet houses, and temple precincts where wealthy children learned reading, writing, and arithmetic. They had strict educational discipline, 12-hour study days, and harsh punishments for those who did not memorize. In temple laboratories, priest-scientists worked on discoveries that would change the world. They divided the year into 12 months, months into 30 days, and the day into 24 hours. They made the first accurate star maps and predicted eclipses. They invented advanced mathematics and solved equations that we only fully grasped centuries later. Among Sumerian kings, one stands apart: Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. His story became the oldest epic in world literature. Gilgamesh was a real king, around 2700 BC, who, over time, transformed into legend. 2/3 god and 1/3 man, strong enough to slay beasts with bare hands, wise enough to build the greatest city. Yet strength and wisdom did not bring him happiness. Gilgamesh suffered from the universal curse, death. Though partly divine, he knew he would die, and this fear drove him to search for deeper meaning and for immortality. In the epic, he undertakes a long journey seeking eternal life, fights monsters, crosses seas, meets ancient sages, and finally finds a magical plant granting eternal life, only to lose it to a serpent before he can eat it. The message is clear: humans cannot conquer death, but they can conquer oblivion. They can build, create, and leave a lasting legacy. That is Gilgamesh's immortality. He built Uruk as a wonder and immortalized his name in the oldest written story. The Sumerian Golden Age did not last. As humans develop, rivalry and conflict persist. The Sumerians faced a major problem. Each city considered itself independent, each king the greatest. Uruk versus Uar, Lagash versus Umma, Nippur versus Kish. Endless wars between brothers who shared language and gods, fought over water, agricultural land, trade routes, and sometimes mere pride. From the north came troubling news. New tribes on the move who spoke a different language and worshipped other gods. The Akkadians, led by a man who would change history, Sargon of Akkad, the first real emperor. Sargon's story begins like a legend. A child placed in a basket and thrown into a river, saved by a humble woman who raised him. The same motif appears later in other traditions. But Sargon was not merely legendary. He was a brilliant politician and military genius. Around 2334 BC, as ruler of the city of Akkad, he dreamed bigger than ruling one city. He sought to unite all Mesopotamia under one banner. Sargon understood what many Sumerian kings did not. True power comes from unity. Civilization cannot flourish amid continuous war. He combined military skill with clever diplomacy, allying with some cities, turning against others when they weakened, convincing some rulers to join rather than fight, destroying those who refused. In fewer than 20 years, he accomplished the impossible. He unified all Mesopotamia from the Persian Gulf to Anatolia, the world's first empire, ruling over more than 1 million people across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. Sargon preserved and embraced Sumerian culture. He learned the Sumerian language, married into noble Sumerian families, and kept local traditions and laws. But he added something new: the idea of the unified state. He built roads linking the empire, created a fast postal system, maintained a professional unified army, standardized weights for trade, and, most importantly, established a unified law that applied to all citizens regardless of origin. For the first time, a merchant from Uruk could travel to Akkad without fear. A farmer in Lagash could appeal to his central authority. Knowledge could spread freely across vast distances. He broke class barriers. Promotion based on merit began to replace pure birthright. Even slaves could buy their freedom. Sargon's empire attracted talent from across the region. Scholars, artists, merchants, and craftsmen came to live and work in a state that valued skill and competence. Under Sargon and his descendants, Mesopotamian civilization reached new heights. The capital, Akkad, became the greatest city of its age with more than 100,000 inhabitants, a staggering number for the time. Wide stone-paved streets, ornate royal palaces, libraries containing thousands of clay tablets. In this environment, science and the arts flourished. Akkadian astronomers drew the first accurate sky maps and divided the zodiac into 12 signs, the same division we use today. Mathematicians developed the sexagesimal base, 60 system used for time and angles. Doctors wrote the first systematic medical texts. Culturally, the Akkadians translated and expanded Sumerian works. The Epic of Gilgamesh reached its final form in this age. And Akkadian traders carried not only goods but ideas and technologies as far as India, Anatolia, and Egypt. Cuneiform spread as a lingua franca. Kings of Iran corresponded with Egyptian pharaohs in Akkadian cuneiform. Mesopotamian building techniques were used from Anatolian temples to Levantine palaces. Akkadian laws became the basis for legal systems in distant civilizations. As Gilgamesh taught us, nothing endures forever. The Akkadian Empire, despite its might, carried the seeds of its fall. First, it became too vast to govern from one capital. Revolts erupted on the fringes before news even reached the center. Administration took months to implement. Second, maintaining huge armies along long borders was immensely costly. Taxes rose, trade declined, and popular discontent grew. And the third, most important, was climate. Around 2200 BC, the region entered a severe drought that lasted decades. River levels fell, harvests failed, famine spread, and starving people paid little attention to culture and learning. From the Zagros Mountains in the east came the final blow: barbarian tribes called the Gutians. Less cultured than the Akkadians and unfamiliar with writing and fine arts. They were fierce warriors and hungry, and hunger often overpowers civilization. They swept through the Akkadian Empire like a destructive wave, razing cities, burning libraries, killing scholars and scribes. In less than 50 years, the greatest empire was rubble. It was a shocking catastrophe. How could such a great civilization fall to barbarians? How could gods allow such destruction? Yet from this tragedy, the peoples of Mesopotamia learned. Civilization is not guaranteed. Each generation must fight to preserve it. Power alone is insufficient. It must be coupled with wisdom, justice, and good governance. Slowly, city after city, resistance rose. The ancient Sumerians, long thought vanished, revived. The city of Ur, under a new strong dynasty, began to recover lost lands. Around 2100 BC, a new name was revered across Mesopotamia: Ur-Nammu, founder of the third dynasty of Ur. He was not only a successful warrior, but a wise ruler who understood military victory alone does not build a lasting civilization. A huge rebuilding project began, expelling the Gutians, rebuilding destroyed cities, restoring irrigation systems, reopening schools and libraries. Most importantly, he issued the first comprehensive written set of laws in history. The Code of Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu's laws were not merely lists of punishments. They were an advanced justice system aimed at protecting the weak and preventing exploitation by the strong. For the first time, a widow had rights. A slave could buy their freedom. An ordinary citizen could sue a corrupt noble. His son Shulgi continued and expanded the project, ruling 48 years and turning the Ur Empire into a new great power. Shulgi, however, claimed divinity publicly. "I am Shulgi, the powerful god, king of Ur, king of Sumer and Akkad." Arrogance that history shows often heralds downfall. Kings who present themselves as gods forget they are human and fall into error. While Ur's kings dreamed of divinity, a small city on the Euphrates steadily grew: Babylon, Babalu, gate of the god. Initially not a military power, Babylon had something more valuable: a strategic location in the heart of trade routes and clever rulers who understood that wealth can outweigh force. In 1894 BC, an Amorite king rose to Babylon's throne who would change history: Hammurabi. He is forever linked with the first comprehensive code of laws, but he did not begin as a great lawgiver. He was a young, ambitious king of a small city surrounded by powerful enemies. Ur to the south, Ashur to the north, Elam to the east, and Mari to the west. Each could have crushed little Babylon. Hammurabi played a long game. Rather than direct confrontation, he used diplomacy and shifting alliances, supporting some city-states against others. then turning on them when they weakened, until he eliminated his rivals. When he became the strongest king in Mesopotamia, he began his greatest project, unifying the laws. Around 1750 BC, Hammurabi issued a revolutionary body of laws, 282 clauses carved on a more than 2-meter black stone pillar, the Stele of Hammurabi. At its top, a relief shows Hammurabi receiving the laws from the sun god Shamash, the god of justice. The message: these are not laws of a mortal's whim, but sacred laws everyone must respect, even the king. The principle an eye for an eye appears here, but the idea was not blind revenge. It was balanced justice, punishment proportional to the crime. Crucially, Hammurabi's code protects the weak. Many clauses address widows, orphans, slaves, women, and children. For the first time, law was a stable written reference, not subject to a ruler's caprice. Hammurabi published copies across his empire, ordered public readings in marketplaces so even the illiterate would learn the law's spirit, and established judicial schools and a tiered court system from local to the Supreme Court in Babylon. He also regulated economic life, price controls, protection against fraud, loan and interest regulation, even bankruptcy rules. Hammurabi understood a strong economy is the basis of a strong state. Under Hammurabi and his successors, Babylon entered a golden age lasting about 2 centuries. The city grew into the largest in the world with more than 200,000 inhabitants. Massive walls and 8 great gates opened on major trade routes. Palaces and temples rose to the sky. But the real marvel was city life. The main market echoed with dozens of languages. Hittite traders selling iron and silver from Anatolia, Phoenician merchants bringing purple dye and ivory, caravans from India and Afghanistan carrying spices and gems. Education transformed. Temple schools expanded beyond priestly and noble children. The poor could obtain scholarships. The curriculum included cuneiform literacy, arithmetic, engineering, astronomy, history, geography, literature, and poetry. Top students advanced to higher studies in medicine, engineering, law, or business administration. Babylonians developed systematic business management, real banks issuing loans and currency exchanges, complex commercial companies with multiple partners, and even insurance-like protections for trade voyages. They invented double-entry accounting. Every transaction had 2 sides, debit and credit, the same system used worldwide today. Their greatest intellectual achievements were in mathematics and astronomy. They perfected the base, 60 system, anticipated Pythagorean relations by 1,000 years, solved second and third degree equations with remarkable accuracy, and tracked planetary motions with precision rivaling modern instruments. In medicine, they differentiated between bodily and mental illnesses, used plant and animal remedies, performed simple surgeries, and established formal medical education with exams and specializations. They were also pioneers in historical method. Babylonian records kept precise chronological data of political, economic, and astronomical events, a priceless source for ancient Near Eastern history. While the Babylonians developed peaceful civilization, another power rose in northern Mesopotamia, less refined but far more aggressive. The Assyrians, named after their principal city Assur on the Tigris. They cared less for arts and letters and more for war. Assur was initially a small trading city, but its location made it vulnerable to tribal raids. To defend itself, it built a strong army, and soon discovered that offense can be better than defense. One great early king was Tukulti-Ninurta I, around 1244 to 1208 BC. He launched expansion campaigns, captured Babylon, and took the statue of Marduk to Assur as a trophy. But he soon learned occupying conquered lands was harder than taking them. Babylonian revolts and occupation costs undermined his gains. The Assyrians learned from this. Conquest alone is insufficient. To rule an empire, you must break the will of resistance. Thus, the Neo-Assyrian period began, an era of organized terror. In the 9th century BC, Ashurnasirpal II and later Tiglath-Pileser III, and most notably Ashurnasirpal II and Sennacherib and Ashurbanipal redefined military power. Ashurnasirpal II and especially Ashurnasirpal's successors perfected state terror as official policy. Ashurnasirpal II, or later rulers like Sargon II, Sennacherib, Tiglath-Pileser III, Ashurbanipal, documented their brutality in detailed reliefs and texts. They boasted of flaying enemies alive, using skins as wall coverings, impaling captives, images intended to terrify and force submission. The strategy worked. In a single campaign, 43 cities surrendered to Assyria without a single arrow fired. Fear was stronger than any army. But Assyrian cruelty was coupled with military genius. They developed the first professional standing army with specialized units: cavalry for rapid warfare, heavy infantry for direct combat, sappers and engineers for siegecraft. Assyrian siege machines were engineering marvels: towering movable siege towers, stone-throwing catapults, battering rams. No fortress was impregnable. Organization mattered most. Every soldier knew his role. Commanders were professional, not merely nobles who inherited office. Shalmaneser III and others continued the expansion. Shalmaneser III and Sennacherib campaigned relentlessly. Under Shalmaneser and Esarhaddon, the empire reached its maximum extent. The new Assyrian capital at Nineveh on the Tigris was different from Old Assur, a planned, grand city built by Sennacherib around 700 BC, taking 15 years and vast resources. Its walls stretched 12 miles and rose 25 meters high, with 15 monumental gates and avenues up to 26 meters wide, wider than some modern streets. In the city center, Sennacherib built an unparalleled palace with 71 rooms, walls covered with colored reliefs depicting his victories, floors of imported marble, and a throne of ivory and gold inlaid with jewels. But Nineveh's true wonder was the library of Ashurbanipal, the last great Assyrian king and a passionate lover of knowledge. He sent armies not only to conquer, but to collect manuscripts and clay tablets from every conquered city. The library of Ashurbanipal came to contain over 30,000 clay tablets, all Mesopotamian knowledge, myths, laws, and sciences preserved. Thanks to that library, we have the Epic of Gilgamesh, Hammurabi's laws, and many other texts today. Ashurbanipal was a complex figure, a ruthless commander who flayed enemies and burned cities. Yet in his palace he read ancient Sumerian literature, wrote poetry, and debated philosophers about life and death. That contradiction, unrivaled cruelty paired with immense scholarship, symbolizes the Assyrian civilization, the greatest cultural achievements alongside the worst massacres. An empire built on fear is destined to fall. Centuries of repression stirred resistance. Signs of weakness appeared even during Ashurbanipal's time. Revolts in Babylon, continued raids by mountain tribes, and increasing difficulty recruiting soldiers. Economically, the empire strained. The professional army was costly, and prolonged wars drained the state coffers. Occupied peoples needed garrisons rather than taxes, making the system unsustainable. In a decisive turn, a powerful alliance formed against Assyria. The Medes in the east under Cyaxares, or Cyaxar, and the rising Babylonian revolt under Nabopolassar, father of a future famous Babylonian king. The Medes were mountain warriors with strong cavalry. The Babylonians were heirs to the ancient civilization with engineering skill and resources. United by deep hatred of Assyrian oppression, they launched a final annihilation campaign that in 614 to 612 BC the assault intensified. First Assur, the old capital, fell. City after Assyrian city collapsed. The decisive moment came in 612 BC, the Siege of Nineveh. Troops attacked from all sides, Median armies from the north and east, Babylonian armies from the south and west. The siege lasted 3 months. Finally, Nineveh fell. Palaces burned, the great library was buried in ruins, and the population was slaughtered or scattered. The last Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, or Ashurbanipal / Lake King, chose death over capture, setting his palace on fire. Thus ended the most brutal empire of the ancient world, as it began in fire and blood. The fall of Assyria did not plunge Mesopotamia into chaos. Rather, it paved the way for a glorious Babylonian revival under the new Chaldean dynasty. Nabopolassar, liberator of Babylon, was a wise king who learned history's lessons. He did not imitate Assyrian terror. He restored the ancient Babylonian tradition of rule by justice and wisdom. His son Nebuchadnezzar II, 605 BC, was even more ambitious. When Nebuchadnezzar took the throne, his dream was to make Babylon the greatest city in history. He rebuilt Babylon from its foundations to become a wonder. The new walls were 25 meters thick and 100 meters high. These numbers are legendary, but meant to convey massive fortifications, wide enough for chariots to pass side by side. The Ishtar Gate, the main ceremonial entrance, was a glazed tile masterpiece of blue and yellow reliefs of lions and winged bulls. At the city's heart, Nebuchadnezzar built the Ziggurat et Amenenki, the temple that bridged earth and sky, rising perhaps to 91 meters. The structure later associated with the biblical Tower of Babel. The most famous of his projects were the Hanging Gardens, terraces on the palace rooftop arranged in terraces with trees and flowers from all corners of the empire, irrigated by a complex system pumping water from the Euphrates. Legend says Nebuchadnezzar built them for his Median wife Amytis, who missed the green mountains of her homeland. A romantic tale historians debate, though politically they certainly impressed visitors and showcased imperial wealth. Under Nebuchadnezzar, the sciences reached new peaks. Babylonian astronomy at this time became more precise than its contemporary Greek counterpart. They predicted eclipses and planetary events with extraordinary accuracy, plotted planetary paths in detail, and understood periodicities in celestial phenomena. Babylonian mathematics advanced to solve complex algebraic problems and build extensive computational tables. Some mathematical problems they solved would not be resolved in Europe until millennia later. In medicine, Babylon had a developed diagnostic and therapeutic system. Physicians distinguished physical from mental illnesses and used plant and animal-based remedies and simple surgeries. They also had formal medical education with examinations and specialties. Perhaps the most important intellectual achievement was the systematic recording of history. Babylonians compiled chronological records of political, economic, and astronomical events, invaluable for later historians. In foreign policy, Nebuchadnezzar built an empire different from Assyria's. Instead of terror, he ruled through diplomacy, respect, and incorporation. When he conquered Judah in 586 BC and deported many Jews to Babylon, he did not treat them as slaves. He allocated arable land, allowed religious practice, and some deportees even participated in administration. This Babylonian exile often resembled organized migration more than perpetual captivity. Nebuchadnezzar's tolerant policies fostered Babylon as a cosmopolitan cultural center. Persians, Egyptians, Greeks, Jews, and Arabs lived side by side, producing astonishing cultural mixes, art blending old Mesopotamian styles with new influences, architecture, sculpture, painting, music, and literature reaching new heights. But glory does not last forever. After Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BC, Babylon entered political turmoil with a series of weaker kings. In 556 BC, a strange ruler rose, Nabonidus, Instead of ruling, Nabonidus obsessed with antiquities and archaeological digs, spending years in the Arabian desert excavating ancient ruins while leaving administration to his son Belshazzar. Priests considered this an offense to the traditional god Marduk, because Nabonidus favored worship of the moon Geodete. At this moment, a new power rose in the east, one that would change the world: the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. Cyrus was unlike previous kings. He was not just a successful conqueror or skilled administrator, but a visionary who believed that the successful empire unites peoples rather than oppresses them. When Persian armies reached Babylon's gates in 539 BC, they faced little resistance. Nabonidus remained in the desert, and Belshazzar was preoccupied with feasts. The Babylonians, exhausted by chaotic rule, opened the gates and even welcomed the Persians. But Cyrus's true surprise came after the conquest. Unlike Assyria's conquerors, he did not destroy Babylon. He entered in a peaceful ceremony, declared himself protector of Babylonian traditions and the patron of the god Marduk, and, most notably, issued what is often called the first declaration of human rights, the Cyrus Cylinder, now in the British Museum. It enshrined religious freedom for all peoples, forbade forced labor, and allowed exiles to return to their homelands. Cyrus implemented this policy. Jewish exiles in Babylon were allowed to return to Judah and rebuild their temple. Other displaced peoples returned home. Local religions and cultures were officially protected. This was not mere magnanimity, but smart strategy. Rather than spending resources and soldiers to suppress revolts, Cyrus invested in winning hearts. And the result was a stable, powerful empire stretching from India to the Aegean. With Cyrus's conquest of Babylon, the long era of independent Mesopotamian civilizations ended after more than 3,000 years of self-rule. Mesopotamia became part of a larger imperial framework: Persian, then Macedonian, Alexander, then Parthian, then Sasanian. Yet its traditions of science, literature, and governance persisted and influenced the world. Babylonian and Mesopotamian scholars served in Persian courts and transmitted knowledge to Greece and India. Cuneiform continued to be used for centuries. Mesopotamian literary, mythological, and religious traditions spread into other cultures. In the Alexandrian library, Greek scholars studied Babylonian texts. In medieval Europe, Babylonian astronomy and mathematics were texts of study. Today, we still use the Mesopotamian sexagesimal system for time and celestial coordinates. Babylonian constellations shaped astrological systems. When we look back across 5,000 years at Mesopotamian civilization, we see a staggering human achievement. It didn't just invent writing, the wheel, or law. It invented the city, the organized state, the very idea that humans can cooperate to build something larger and more beautiful than their individual dreams. Most importantly, it created a revolutionary intellectual idea that the future can be better than the present and that humans can improve their conditions through knowledge, work, and cooperation. Mesopotamian civilizations experienced wars, oppression, and destruction like all human societies. But they also produced beauty, justice, and wisdom. Their positive achievements far outweigh their faults. Gilgamesh, who sought immortality and did not find it, achieved a different kind of immortality, memory, and influence. After 5,000 years, we still read his story. Hammurabi's laws laid basic principles that remain foundational for justice systems today. Nebuchadnezzar showed that true power can arise from creativity and beauty, not only from violence. And the greatest lesson of Mesopotamia is that human progress isn't a straight line. It has rises and falls. Yet humans always have the capacity to rise and rebuild, from a small village on riverbanks to empires that govern the known world, from the first written word to the first just law. We have witnessed the birth of everything we today call civilization. Humanity learned to dream, to build, to create, and to rise after every fall. Clear practical lessons remain. 1. Wise leadership matters more than raw military power. Hammurabi's fair rule lasted longer than Assyrian brute force. 2. Cooperation and unity achieve what destructive competition cannot. Warring Sumerian city-states fell while unified empires prospered. 3. Investing in knowledge and education ensures survival. Ashurbanipal's library preserved civilization's heritage. 4. Justice and tolerance are stronger than repression and terror. Cyrus the Persian's tolerant policies built stable supremacy while tyrants fell quickly. 5. Patience and perseverance overcome obstacles. Mesopotamian civilization rose and fell dozens of times, yet continued to contribute. Perhaps the greatest achievement was not a tool or law, but an idea that people can cooperate to build something greater than individual dreams. Dream big. If those ancient people with their simple tools could build a civilization that changed the world, what can we build with our knowledge and means? What legacy will we leave for future generations? Civilization always begins with one person's dream. If this long journey through Mesopotamia moved you, leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more stories of great civilizations. Tell us which civilization you want us to explore next in the coming nights. Good night, and before you sleep, think of this astonishing truth. Everything around you, the writing you read, the laws that protect you, the cities you inhabit, the dreams you dream, began there, in the land between the rivers, by people much like you and me who once decided to dream of a better future.